Welcome to No Hits Radio, where we dive deep into the uncharted waters of technology.
Good morning and welcome to No Hits Radio. This is the Morning Express Show, a special edition with Reese Mode as your host. And today we have a really special guest, Maxwell Opondo, CEO, founder of Zerobionic. Maxwell, talk to us.
Morning.
Morning.
It's nice to be here.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Maxwell and I'm happy to be here. So it's nice to have you.
Now, Maxwell, you have an impressive resume, I must say. You're young, just like me. But you've really traveled and you've done a lot. So I have to believe with the work you're doing with in assistive robotics that you're really good at sign language. You are, right?
Well, that was the main problem. I'm not good at sign language. And that's why we came up with Zerobionic essentially, because I was not pathetic with sign language.
You are just pathetic.
Yeah.
So in preparation, I learned one thing in sign language.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do it. For those at home who are tuning on radio, catch us on YouTube and you'll be able to see what exactly I did. But what the hell is that? Okay, if anyone knows, they'll leave a comment on YouTube. But let's just say it's not the friendliest of words. But anyways, Maxwell, robotics.
Yeah.
I need to know the journey because you didn't only choose to do robotics, you chose to do it to help, to have impact. So what's the story, basically?
I think after finishing my high school, I did a couple of travels with Young Scientist Kenya, just going around Kenya, trying to teach kids, getting them into STEM and just having them learn things STEM.
Right.
And during one of these periods, I was fortunate to have traveled to Ghana and Sierra Leone.
All right.
And during this period, I noticed that quite a number of the population was amputated.
Wow.
So then I saw how they were coping up with the amputees there. That is, they would get makeshift prosthetics.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started looking into a mechanized prosthetic for people with motor problems.
All right.
But then when it comes to now the accessibility of these technologies, and then me not being in Sierra Leone for that particular amount of time, I shifted back to Kenya. And then our break moment was when I realized that I was interacting with a lot of kids who were deaf and could not hear. And I had done quite a number of prosthetics that were automated. And so I was like, how can I use what I've already done to now communicate with the deaf?
Build upon it to now deal with the interest at hand. So just to take you back a bit, like Zerobionic is a startup, a tech startup, and you guys are specifically focusing on, those who are hearing impaired, to bring that translation to them. So before that, you're talking about making prosthetics. I want to know the deep story from there. Like before you were making those, what were you doing? Because it's not easy to go from not being able to make prosthetics to hear mechanized limb. So I'm curious, what was the inspiration for that specifically before we go into?
I always had a thing for hardware, so I'd always been very hands-on with hardware. But then mostly into the IoT space with Young Scientist Kenya, Strathmore.
Yes.
And I just used to love doing a lot of hardware. just moving around, teaching kids a lot of hardware. But then now pivoting into robotics, since I had a couple of backgrounds in 3D printing, just simulation of robotic systems, and the problem that we had in hand. So building all that background knowledge just pivoted into robotics because the driving factor was that kids or students my age that were in schools at that time, that were deaf, were being left out in a number of spaces.
Right.
So that was the pivoting moment for me to just get more deep into robotics and just not general hardware.
I believe it's a beautiful idea what you're doing because you're focusing on STEM.
Yeah.
And in a way, I think your idea is that if they learn STEM, they'll be able to even help themselves more. Like you believe that they'll go there and you'll be able to give them a piece of hardware and they understand how it works, what they need to do to tweak certain things, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a beautiful idea, I must say. The other day we were having a conversation on these startups and whether they take off and how they take off. And you have the factor, by the way, I need to let you know. You have the impact factor. Because what you're doing is actually touching these people's lives, right? So I want us to talk about the tech itself. So once again, I have to refer you to the YouTube channel again. I'm sorry, our audience. But right here in my hands, we have a prosthetic. Just give us a few details about it and just kind of describe what we have here, the model.
So what we have on stage is, I think, version 4, beta of what we're doing. So essentially, how this is supposed to work is we are more of doing remote learning for the disabled.
Yeah.
That is, we have something like a Zoom platform on one end, the command platform.
Yeah.
And then on the other, we have the prosthetic. Essentially, taking it back, while we were doing this, I was in school.
Yes.
So I needed to communicate or just teach students remotely, or like how you would, a teacher will teach via Google Meet or via Zoom.
Or via Zoom.
So what essentially now this does is there is the platform on the other, there is the arm on the other end. So I basically speak. So what it does, it will map out my facial data. So pinpoint the 168 marker points that you have on the face.
168.
Yeah.
Very intentional number.
It's the bare minimum of marker points that you can use to convey information with your face, emotions, a lot of things. But then for the people who can't hear, for the deaf community, you can't tell me that you're happy for me, but then you're frowning.
Exactly.
So that was one thing that we were considering while doing facial model. And then that facial model is mapped or integrated with a voice module.
Yeah.
So the voice and the facial is converted into, as I speak, real-time signs. And then that is channeled to the prosthetic on the other end. So when I speak, the arm is able to sign in real time. And in a sign perspective, I think the model I've carried here essentially has an embedded screen or an extension to So what that does is it has a video and image generative model. So for example, I'm speaking and I say, I take you through a session in robotics.
Sure.
So we have this microcontroller and you're wiring this ground pin to this other pin of the actuator. So what that does is it picks out these unique keywords that you're mentioning and then generates images and videos of what I'm saying in real time. That's
crazy.
Yeah.
I have to say. So parts that I really loved about this, was face and hand coordination. And I do remember when I was looking through and asking myself, why is he analyzing the face as well? But yes, it is important when you do that translation that when I say I'm happy, I'm not looking I'm sad, Exactly. So to be able to now connect all that to the image generation, let's be honest, it takes a lot of time and resources. The machine learning that has been invested into this, I can only imagine the huge amount of database. I am curious, how many people have you had do the same thing? Or is it you doing the same instance most of the times? Or how exactly is your database?
So primarily we're working with LLMs.
Okay.
God bless.
God bless ChatGPT.
Yeah. I mean, it was really hard during the earlier days, but then we have a lot of open source models. We've had DeepSeek come up recently.
And now no timers on you saying, done until 3 a.m.
No. I mean, what we have on the base model is we've integrated 3 LLMs. That is, we have Grok. We have OpenAI, that is ChatGPT, and we have a DeepSeek. So in terms of now, it's more of redundancy. So when this one experiences a lag, it switches to the other one. But then,
and let me ask. Now we touched on AI. Once we touch AI, there's no going back. So I have to ask, those APIs, for those who are at home, which one has been shown the most proficiency, like of those 3 AIs you just mentioned?
So basically, all of them are built, or I can say 90% of the LLMs that we have, apart from Grok that I'm aware of, are essentially built on top of OpenAI's API. So essentially, OpenAI's API at the moment is the most robust API that you can use in this side of the Sahara because of, say, the connectivity and just the speed that it has. So we've essentially been working OpenAI for most of the time.
You're out here being a brand ambassador.
But then it's because it's the only... I can say it's the only model that is up to speed at the moment that is really robust and has been done quite well for developers at the moment. And there's a lot of startups building on top of OpenAI's API.
I have to say, your vision must be a bit more clearer now with the AI, right? I think a lot of the problems that you guys were experiencing, especially now, machine learning part where you have to go through this enormous amounts of data so that you make sure you have all the signs and different ways someone could sign and, the small nuances, it comes with the angles, right? Like that. And now you have something that can already perceive that for you, I assume. Yeah, it's mind-blowing what you can do with that. And so we don't stay too long on AI. Let's go back to I am mind blown, as I've said, about this whole robotics thing. But I have to ask about the challenges. Because to reach from version 4 to now, where are you now? Which is the current version?
Well, I can say version 12 beta.
12 beta, right?
Yeah.
So those are 12 versions those are 8 more from this, right? And for you to experience that kind of growth, it had to be backing support. And I'd like to know, how have you gone through the world of venture capital and speaking to people to be able to bring this robotics to life? Because it's never easy.
Yeah. In terms of support, we've really had quite a number of support from a number of organizations that are really essential, are looking into fostering inclusivity. So first things first, it's just like to mention Strathmore. Strathmore University has been key in just facilitating some of the things we do, and in terms of the labs, in terms of building, in terms of prototyping, they've been really instrumental.
So your current lab is there?
Yeah, we're currently based at Strathmore University. Yeah, definitely. You're welcome.
Welcome. All right. So at Strathmore, I found out that you're on a certain advisory board, education. If I am not mistaken. And I'm aware that your mission there is more access to STEM. Yes. So just take me through how exactly within that advisory they have helped push Zerobionic.
Yeah. So the current setup of our classrooms, or the current setup of our school system is that for you to get into university or to get into a formal class, there are certain metrics that you have to meet.
Yes.
First, you have to hearing, you have to speak, and you essentially have to see. So, in my 3 years in university, I've interacted with little or close to no student that is impaired. And so just trying to get this into the education system, that is kind of where now these boards or these systems are actually looking into, trying to tailor lectures, delivery, the mix-up of students, not really in the way that you'd have special universities, which is something I've not heard of.
Yeah.
Well, in high schools, we have, say, Thika School for the Blind.
Yeah.
We have, say, Joyland Special School.
Yeah.
But then when you pivot to university, which is
integrity
it's very key into accelerating or getting you into certain spaces. There's nothing of the sort going on. So that is the conversation that is essentially going on in these higher institutions of learning and boards, trying to have inclusive spaces and having our classroom setups in the universities and stuff. Learning for different people. And so in terms of now, Strathmore spearheading the inclusive space.
Yes.
We are currently looking into integration of such systems into classes, such that you essentially don't have to go to miniature fields that is
you can't do STEM. I think that's STEM. The goal, right? You can't do STEM. And your goal for inclusivity has led you to win a couple of awards. And I think it's beautiful that you're being recognized at the Africa Tech Awards. Mr. Young Innovator in the house, by the way, if you guys were not aware. And also you won the gold award at the RQ education, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's beautiful that the world is recognizing that this is an inclusive thing, and Strathmore is spearheading this and allowing this to happen. So the vision is that this prosthetics be able to make something like that possible, where it's flawless. I speak, signs, everyone is happy. The lecturer doesn't feel like they have to focus too much on, giving to attention, and it makes a clean, inclusive space, right? Well, I have a deep question for you. Well, you've already told me about this robotics thing, a goal of impact. I'm aware that you've also dealt with other startups before. There's the one for phones.
Yeah.
So I need to ask you how you're finding balance between all this. When it comes, you times are a student. Right? And at the same time, you do have this big project that's weighing on your hand. You want to get it there. And if we speak on timelines, how do you map it out in your head?
So I usually hear a lot of, balance, get a strike between these and these.
Yeah.
But essentially, in the world, there is no balance. You have to choose your cup of tea.
You have to.
So, in as much as balance is involved, I have a very strong team that I work with. So
Glad you brought that up.
Yeah. So we essentially complement each other in terms of how getting things done. And I think Nora is with us in studio. So yeah. I'd say that the startup world is a really interesting environment.
Yeah.
And it's training and enlightening if you love or you're very passionate about what you're doing, usually make time or make
exactly.
A space. Yeah.
Now that you brought up the team aspect, I am interested how at Zerobionic you guys are divided. Let us know how many members you have, how many deal with social media, how many deal with the tech itself, who's looking after the lab, cleaning the lab, who's locking the lab. So I think just to get a kind of like people infrastructure, how you guys manage.
Yeah. We are a team of 7. Have 2 international engineers from Australia, essentially dealing with mostly the machine learning and segregation bit of things. And at the space, we are 5 at the moment. Okay. I can't really say that there's that particular segregation of roles at the moment, but in terms of financials, in terms of outreach, in terms of just investor relations, we have a double team here, or a team member from Zerobionic, that is Nora.
Yeah.
And I like to refer myself as head of getting things done.
Head of getting things done.
Zerobionic. So essentially, I just get things done.
That's your role, CEO, right?
Yeah. So
just to take you back, but you go too far. Yeah. You mentioned 2 Australians that are essentially helping with the machine learning part. So how exactly does that work?
Yeah. So while we've been scaling, I happen to have traveled to Switzerland in the course of last year.
I know.
And
I'm aware. Okay.
And I met a couple of very passionate individuals who are doing something around inclusive tech and who are really robust in the space. So with the virtual world that is around the moment, we are kind of making ends meet from different ends of the world. So they've been very instrumental in scaling and just having the data set reach to, I think, 90 billion parameters at the moment.
90 billion parameters. Yeah. I'm guessing it's a lot. But
actually, that is just based on robotics.
Yeah.
So we're currently venturing into the other STEM aspects, but we primarily did an LLM and data set on robotics. So in terms of sign for STEM, robotics has been done to the letter.
To the letter, to the T.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have to get the groundwork done first. But I can't imagine the numerous English words, the numerous pronunciations. And good thing the LLMs are already working on it. So your translation becomes a bit easier. So we were talking about team and Zerobionic's team and how the progression is going in that direction. So who inspires you? Who inspires you? Because I must assume Mr. Getting Things Done must draw inspiration from somewhere before he brings it to the team.
So essentially, I have 3 people that I look up to.
Okay.
First is my mom. My mom is a really outgoing and hardworking.
Yeah, shout out all the moms there.
Yeah, shout out to all the moms outside there.
Yeah.
And then, secondly, I have a mentor.
Yes.
Who is also in the assistive space. It's called Eli Savatia. He's the founder and CEO of Signverse. Anybody listening outside there, you can go check out Signverse.
Yeah.
So they're also doing amazing stuff in the assistive space. And essentially, he's been my mentor for like the last 5 years, been looking up to what he does and how he handles most of his things.
Yeah.
So, I look up to Eli. He's a really great guy.
So, Eli and mom got your back pushing through this thing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And speaking of now another company like Signverse that are doing the same space, I think it is a challenge to you to make whatever you do with Zerobionic to be a bit different, to set you apart. So how do you hope to bridge that gap because robotics, we have, I'm sure you've seen the amazing work NVIDIA is doing.
Yeah. I failed to mention, but then NVIDIA is currently supporting us with hardware.
There we go.
For building. So
there we go.
NVIDIA is really doing an amazing job in humanoid robotics, and
I've been watching some of those clips, and we have robots that can speak to you and even tell you that, let me switch from water in plant mode that I can shake your hand.
Yeah.
It's basically even telling you about its own delay time. To be able to reach that level, there's a sweet engineering that has gone through. So in that story of sweet engineering, what sauce is Zerobionic hoping to give to make itself separate?
So in terms of getting humanoid robotics in Africa, we are primarily focusing on education. That is first.
Yes.
And we are integrating robotics and generative models, that is vision and video. And for us, it's basically trying to get people who are left out into spaces that they've been left out. And our cup of tea is that we are primarily focusing in the technical aspect of it and the affordability aspect of things. So how we...
I do remember, now that you mention it, yes, you guys are focusing on using recyclable materials in your products and all that. Go on.
So essentially, when we started, we were 3D printing the exoskeletons, which is quite expensive.
I know.
In terms of the material or in terms of acquisition of just everything. And then with the help of Kenya Climate, that is Climate Launchpad and Kenya Climate, we pivoted into using recycled plastic. Since in Nairobi, we have a lot of that.
We have plenty of plastic.
With that, we are reproducing a 3D spool. That is, we are using these plastic and then converting them into spool. That is material used to print the exoskeletons. And then that is now used to print the outer layers of the exoskeletons.
Okay.
So that cut, essentially that cut the cost of production by, I'd say 95%.
That's crazy.
Yeah, because now essentially what you have to factor in is just power.
So two birds with one stone, environmental conservation, as well as now combining a niche of education. And I will say, yes, that does give Zerobionic what we call the gap, the space, now that you guys are settling in your own niche.
Yeah.
All right. We are about to go into break, but before that, I would like to engage our audience out there listening. If you want to drop some questions to us, head to Instagram at nhr.live and Twitter on No Hits Radio Live. just give a question and make sure it's a challenging one. We have a brilliant mind here. So if you do want to ask him how he deals with the motor function, if it's doing a 270 degree and how he writes that code, please be sure to do it. All right. See you after the break. Welcome back to the show. So we're just speaking here with Max, and Alia had signed something which, let's say, is not the most appropriate of signs. And he has a story to share with us of a situation in Rwanda. So let's begin with that.
I think this is one of the times that I almost spent a night in their cells.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So I think one thing with language and barriers is that you never know the people you're dealing with and the sentimental value they hold to things. Okay. So while you were training the model, the machine learning model and the auditory model for the robot, we were training it in a studio setup.
Okay.
That is, it was I think soundproofed, and there were no interferences.
Okay.
And so we took it to the conference.
Yeah.
And so in the conference, there's a lot of people talking, there are a lot of interferences and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, there was a dude who was speaking and another was signing.
Mm-hmm.
So in that mix-up, the arm essentially spelled something really vulgar. And have you ever had to apologize for a robot? I think that's one bit of that's one place we're heading to.
It's the place we're heading to. Yeah. We're talking about who owns AI, who does what something else did. So, but I have to ask. So, you've not trained it on any vulgar.
Yeah.
And
actually, we were training it, and then we were training it on an open source module.
So it has everything.
It had everything. And so we had to censorize some words to kind of remove them from the vocabulary and just have it not sign certain words. And factoring in that we are dealing mostly with kids and students and then professional spaces.
Shida, problem.
The guy was threatening to call the police since how can your machine insult me? I was like,
he was really offended.
Yeah.
And I think the big problem was that it was in a public forum, right?
It was in a public forum.
So other people are looking and they're like, what's going on here?
Yeah. So having to apologize for hardware.
Tough spot.
Yeah.
So I think, unfortunate as that is, that was impact on the world.
Yeah.
So I do want us to discuss a bit on what real world impact this has had and already has. I do know that, of course, the goal is to get this into the hands of those who really need it. So do you have any success stories that you can share that specifically Zerobionic has brought to life?
Oh, yeah. So we, at the moment, we've done over 78 pilots across Kenya, 4 in Switzerland and 5 in Rwanda.
Okay.
So out of these, we've worked with over 5,000 students. That is in Kenya.
Yeah.
Rwanda, around 115. Yes. And in Switzerland, we are currently training, I think it's 12 special students in robotics using as a model.
Wow.
And in the course of last year, we piloted our first conference model.
Yeah.
That is, we had it on a conference and then just attached the sign model of it to a wider screen. So in terms of now the tech spaces, the tech conferences, we can now say that we can have special students or special kids or special people in conferences that are tech-based. Yeah.
Wow. That's impact.
Yeah.
I mean, and looking back, this thing started from you with YSK, going out and I saw when Cabaret Girls, right? And you got to interact with people who are really interested in STEM. And I think at that point, the idea was also already brewing in you or not already formed, if I'm not wrong. So now that you can now go to tech spaces, I think it makes it quite easier to sell the idea. But I need to know, how's the feedback? Because you can have the idea right. You can have your people right. You can have your Australian guys shoving the data right, you know?
Yeah.
But the big movers, the organizers, the government, are they implementing these things?
Well, we have a number of support from a number of Kenyan organizations.
Right.
So in terms of innovation, there are spaces or there are organizations like Kenya, there is Innovate Now, who are in the accessibility space that are really pushing for support into this space.
Yeah.
And in terms of feedback from students and from teachers and number of people, I just love to ask if essentially you are left out in a space and right now you can have a niche of it. Okay, let's put that aside.
Okay.
Have you ever imagined or well, I'm a computer science major, right?
Yes.
But then I did chemistry in high school.
Yes, you did.
Didn't love the subject.
I was
completely.
I was chemistry rep, so you know I was. Anyway,
so all those organic chemistry, reacting, I think a lot of things. Now picture that for a deaf student. Well, I could hear, I could see, I could interact with the teacher, but then I hated it. So now you can imagine for somebody who is really passionate about chemistry, but then can't hear.
Yeah.
It's so in terms of now a response, just having these kids or this community involved in a space that they were essentially left out from is something that they've really embraced warmly, and they're kind of our driving force into making these more affordable and more accessible for students in Kenya.
That goes back to what you were talking about earlier, that the idea is that essentially by you giving them this and focusing on STEM, you're essentially giving them the tool in their hand and showing them how they expound on it.
Yeah. And
especially with all these LLMs, we now even have the small language models, right? Yeah. So you can have one specifically on chemistry.
Yeah.
And you know, whenever the situation comes that you're now speaking on chemistry, it now comes up and takes over, and it now gives a more detail.
Yeah. So what we're working on with Jetsons from NVIDIA now is we've done data sets, or I can say kind of LLMs for different versions of STEM.
Yeah.
So the one that has been done robustly is an LLM on robotics.
Yeah.
Robotics paired with sign data. Mm-hmm. So an LLM on robotics and sign. And we are venturing now into mathematics and chemistry. Yeah. So kind of just building up the data set as we go, as we move forward.
Yes.
So essentially, it's there, as you said, miniature LLMs of different
categories, just to deal with basically all the sections of STEM.
Yeah.
And the leaning on AI that's bringing us, earlier today, we were having the conversation about, or I asked you about Terminator and Transformers, right?
Yeah.
And you said you prefer Transformers, right?
Transformers all day.
Yeah, but the reason was that you said Terminators was more cyborg and more humanoid combination.
Yeah, human-machine integration.
Yes. And you said we're very far from that.
Well, we are not that far.
We're not that far. Yeah, you said 100 years. I'm quoting you. You said 100 years.
I take my word for it. But we have a lot going on in terms of humanoid robotics.
Yeah.
In terms of fusion of hardware and human for preciseness as what God does. we're still a mile from achieving that. But
we are a mile. We are a mile away.
Yeah. But in terms of humanoid hardware or humanoid robotics, I mean, the world is at a really
and the big spoon is AI.
Yeah,
because it joins the dot to that dot.
Yeah,
and then you just take the string, kind of thing.
Essentially, everything. I think everything robotics or everything autonomous at this point has to have artificial intelligence embedded in it.
Yeah.
And what I can say is AI essentially was being built for robots. So because if you're talking of artificial intelligence, what are you putting these?
Yeah, what's the intelligence for?
Yeah. So right now we have end system AIs that people can interact with. And that is one aspect that has made people really aware of AI and stuff. But essentially, in the then days, AI was being done, but then it was being done for autonomous systems, robots and stuff.
Yeah.
And then at the moment, it's advancing to now thinking, having networks connect. But
how easy has it been for you? All right, you have spoke that you have a lot of people in the science space helping you. But on top of that, now to deal with STEM, how easy has that access to that database been for you? Is it like you just go and you're like, oh, I want maths, I'm just going to get it from here. Oh, I want chemistry, I'm going to get it from here. Or is it more of a, I need to talk to this person fast, I know where to get this best? Obviously, you now have contact with NVIDIA, which is, super powerful thing to leverage on. Yeah, but how easy has it been to do that?
So I'd say in terms of access to the database or the data set, we've been building our data set from scratch.
Yeah.
That is, there is no primarily signed STEM data set.
Yeah.
And this has been made really easier with support from Young Scientists Kenya.
Yeah.
So essentially what Young Scientists Kenya does is they do outreach programs and go to schools across Kenya, just trying to foster STEM in these schools. Essentially, they are organization trying to foster STEM in schools in Kenya.
Yeah.
So being an alumni of Young Scientists Kenya, I mentor students in robotics alongside Zerobionic. So while we are mentoring, we're building the data set with the students. So essentially what we'd have an annotator who is usually there to translate. And while I'm mentoring and the annotator is signing what I'm saying, the data set is building into it. So,
have a very hands-on approach on this thing. I mean, things have been made easy, but the hands-on approach definitely, I think, allows you to even know how the machine is working, because the amount of bugs you've probably experienced, little hiccups, big hiccups, Rwanda hiccups.
That's just a tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
So in terms of development, it's been a happy, but we are doing this for accessibility, and we are doing this for inclusion. So we don't have, and otherwise we just have to. So in terms of building, it's usually a very tricky spot.
I can imagine. And on this thing that you're building, I have received questions from the viewers. One of the questions is, as funding comes in, the startups holding, it's not just now only you. It's also those who are backing you, right? They're execs now, right? And how's that been in decision making? Like, do you guys always see eye to eye? Or what kind of boss, CEO, bigger boss CEO relationship are you guys having?
So this being my second time. I'm a two-time founder.
Mm-hmm.
So I
passed with the phones, the
There's a system we're working on just having recyclable materials on trees to detecting cutting down of.
Okay, so now, okay, second time's better.
Mm-hmm. So I learned a couple of lessons during the first time. That is, we've not been going for VCs.
Right.
We've been going for venture capitals and stuff. So what we've been capitalizing on has been grants, and debt investment.
Okay.
So, we're working on monetizing the command platform for Zerobionic at the moment.
Yeah.
And that has been a trajectory in just having to refund some of the debt that we have.
Yeah.
And in terms of now investment, we are kind of focusing more on debt and grant investment rather than venture capitalists and other tricky investors.
So let me get this straight. Venture capitalism ilikufanyia hivi.
Yeah.
Kidogo. So the lesson kind of that you built that was you want to be able to be free. And I'm assuming with Zerobionic now you're feeling a bit more free-willed, right?
Yeah.
That what you're doing is not so, I've said you do this, so you do this.
Yeah.
I need my money back at this time. You're able to manage it.
Yeah. I mean, the investors are a really good set of people.
Yeah.
But at one point, they can be really controlling.
Yeah.
So instead of you driving what you essentially started, it ends up them making decisions or telling you things to do if you don't have that drive power in the organization. So I decided to pivot into just having more of it or more ownership on our end.
Yeah.
And having the decisions from our end and just considering what other people are saying. But then in terms of decision making, it's purely at the moment is based on mostly our team.
That's good.
And
way it should be. The way it should be.
Yeah.
Like it would be terrible if the idea goes off, because when such a great idea, you now have, you've said there was no existence of a data set that is margin, stem, and sign, right? So that's your data set that you're owning. And it is a very important data set, especially where we're going into, right? If someone wants to use AI and they want to do something particular with it that's innovative, they will need that data set if they have that barrier. So for them to break through, it would be terrible if it's now being taken away from your vision, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to hear that from you. It was one of my concerns with this space, but to know that you're aware of how to. So I have to assume you've ran away from money.
Well, a couple of times. It's not always. Okay, they say all that glitters is not gold.
Yeah.
But then all that glitters is gold. But you essentially need for somebody, I think my age.
Yeah.
We have a very.
Are you gonna tell us your age?
No. Just have a we have a very diverse group of people I work with.
Yeah.
So around Strathmore, we have people in the board, or people just advising us on a number of things, one or two. So we have our one Dr. Dillman. We have a number of members from the School of Engineering in Strathmore University. That is our dean, Dr. Julius. There's Alan. There's Damlik. So they've been in the space for quite some time. So these are kind of people that we go to in terms of
big moves.
Yeah, no. In terms of investor relations and investor decisions. So yeah.
Saved you a couple of times.
Yeah. That at some point you'd have to run from chain money.
Chain money. Chain money, but it's a golden chain, but yes.
Well, it can be golden, but you're bound to a wall.
Yeah. Oh. I understand. And most of these things do come with contracts, and it will need your signature, the founder.
Yeah.
All right. And I think, fortunately, we have running out of time, but it has been fantastic having you here. And just to close the show, say what you want to say before we, if there's anything you'd like to leave for us, especially as people, live in this world, we are sometimes unaware of those others who are facing barriers. Yeah. But you have taken robotics and you've leveraged it to help, right? Leave us your closing part. Remember when I was talking about what to do when you're saying that deep moment? Yeah, that might be the time. Okay, yeah.
So mine is just a message to every or any youngster outside there trying to work on something amazing in this side of the Sahara. It can be hard. It can be impossible at some point. But what I usually get from my mom and a number of guys and what I've seen from the space is that if you're going through hell, keep going.
Keep going.
Yeah. At one point, you'll get used to the fire.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, to our viewers, to our listeners, get used to the fire. Been a hot session myself, I got to say. And that has been all for the Morning Express show. Thank you so much, Maxwell Opondo, Zerobionics. Make sure you follow our Instagram, our TikTok, our Facebook, our YouTube. If you want the video, it'll be up on No Hits Radio on YouTube, and you'll be able to see the beautiful prosthetics right here from Zerobionics. I'll catch you next time. Bye.
Listen.
Tune in to No Hits Radio, where we're not just following trends, we're setting them.